News is breaking, of course, around potentially a bit of a war escalation. We'll break that down, but we'll also take a look at the biggest September for Bitcoin and what it might mean for the rest of the year. My name is Paul Bear. Welcome back into Tech Path. Let's dive into it. I do want to thank our sponsor today, and that is iTrust Capital. If you're looking at going into a crypto IRA, and this is one of those tax strategies that you should implement, obviously always get tax advice, but this is a place where you can go in, set up your IRAs. Either you have an existing one or you want to start a brand new one, and you can do it with Bitcoin, Ethereum, altcoins, gold and silver, all of that available within the iTrust ecosystem. Join 250,000 other people that have already done this. All you have to do is use our link down below to get a $100 funding reward to get started. So let's go into the news. And of course, one of the biggest topics right now is what's happening over here in Israel. Breaking: Israel says that Iran has fired a missile attack just moments ago. Widespread trajectories. Quite a bit happening here. Many people are worried this could escalate very quickly. Bloomberg broke a story here a little bit on where this may stand in terms of some of the economic and market positions. And if you look at what they're talking about, is oil prices, of course, briefly rose around 75. The other thing is that Israel says many of the missiles were intercepted and no known injuries. So I think the key here is if they can somehow get to some point that whether it's Iran or Israel getting into feeling like they've kind of positioned against it, but we all know that the move into Lebanon is one of the big factors. So does this have an effect on the market going forward? I think a lot of people are watching this very closely. If you look at, actually, I want to go over to the Bitcoin and the gold chart. I had pulled this one up on Bitcoin versus gold. This is gold, and this, of course, is on the hourly. So over the last 12 hours, you can kind of see gold accelerating, Bitcoin over the last 12 hours declining. However, did hit the 62K mark, dipped down shortly around 60,000. So there were some interesting I think positions that are in play right now for digital assets. But again, this could be a scenario where we just see these short market plunges. Don't get panicked by these situations. Everything is still, I think, not enough information to be able to make decisions on things like this. So just be aware, watch it in the move. This, of course, kind of explains that Bitcoin to gold comparison around these geopolitical tensions as they spike. And I think this is something that could set you in motion for diversifying. And if you look at diversified assets, gold, of course, has always been a potential, but I still believe that digital assets are the route here. Now, do you want to look at that? Real estate, there's a lot of different ways you can go that route, but I think hopefully most of you guys have a little bit more diversification, or you're getting ready to set up for diversification going forward. If you look at September, this was the streak of bad Septembers is over, and now we've got the best performing Bitcoin September we've had ever, and there was a lot of analysts that were not pointing to that. So think about that, best ever versus what we are dealing with. And also the stock market had its best September. So lots of good signals and indicators here going into the next few months. And of course, with that, you have to kind of compare. That's just to show you September right there for 2023 versus what we've been able to see in many of these other monthly returns. So pretty positive right now. I think we're on a high at 7.29%. October, of course, we'll probably have to take some time to recorrect off these global tensions. And this is one of the factors that I talk about often, is that geopolitical unrest is one of the most demanding things on a market. Usually it's short-lived. Now, granted, these can go to be very long-lived, but we haven't seen one of those just yet. So the question is how does the global market trade against that? Money supply is one of the ways that you can track this. And right there is the total money supply, US, Euro area, Japan, etc. But China has reached a new record of 89.7 trillion. So global money supply has skyrocketed 7.3 trillion over the last year, just the last year, which is pretty big in terms of its largest increase in 3 years since 2020, which we all know what happened then. So be on the lookout. There's a lot of liquidity out there, and that liquidity is always looking for deals. And when you have these kind of unrest scenarios playing out, what does that mean? Well, there's going to be some buying opportunities out there for sure. Bitcoin, of course, drops to 63, under 63, fails to rebound after the Fed hints at a future interest rate cuts. Now, there are some points that the Fed is getting on. Let me kind of zoom in on that because that's a little hard to read. Fed chair explained that if the economy moves as expected, markets should expect 2 more rate cuts in 2024, but they would be a quarter-point increment. It's not a committee that feels like it's in a hurry to cut rates quickly. Policy and the move over time for a more neutral stance, but we're not in any preset course, which means they could still come in and do a November 50, even though I think November 50 will depend a lot on jobs again. And we've seen a little bit of jobs numbers that are starting to retrace. So this could play into a slower rate cutting season. Let me know down in the comments below if you guys think we're going to get a 50 or a quarter in November. I'd love to kind of get your insights on this because this will be, I know that's a long ways away, but yet, yeah, it could happen. So definitely a big one. Here, of course, is Fed Powell indicating further rate cuts can be expected, but he's just saying, hey, we're just not on that course. I want to go to a clip real quick that explains a little bit more. This is Jerome Powell. Take a look.
By keeping monetary policy restrictive, we helped restore the balance between overall supply and demand in the economy. That patient approach has paid dividends. Inflation is now much closer to our 2% objective. As I mentioned, our decision to reduce our policy rate by 50 basis points reflects our growing confidence that with an appropriate recalibration of our policy stance, strength in the labor market can be maintained in a context of moderate economic growth and inflation moving down sustainably to 2%. As we consider additional policy adjustments, we will carefully assess incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. Overall, the economy is in solid shape. We intend to use our tools to keep it there.
They don't really have that many tools to keep it there. It's just rate cutting in reality. The factor that plays into this, again, gets into the situation around inflation and also the potential for a recurrence of inflation coming back in. Now, there's many people who say, no, we're on a track right now for 2025 that's much different. Here's Novogratz talking about this and kind of the impact this could have and their strategy. Take a look.
Yeah, listen, the Fed is going to keep moving rates lower. How fast they do, we'll see. I think Chairman Powell was pretty straightforward yesterday. The data is going to matter. I think he'd like to move rates faster, lower faster, but he's not going to be a kamikaze. And so right now you're pricing at about 33 basis points for each of the next meetings. That's probably fair. And we'll see with payroll and a few other big data points.
So what do you think each basis point or even quarter point reduction means to the price of Bitcoin if you think that they actually move in tandem?
Listen, I think almost more importantly than what the U.S. is doing is what China just did, right? We've got now the 2 biggest economies in the world, cutting rates and pumping liquidity into the system. And at the same time, we're going to have an election and either candidate wins, we're going to have a lot more regulatory clarity. And it was really interesting what Walt Bettinger said. He said, well, if we had regulatory clarity, then Schwab would probably be much bigger in crypto. At least that's the way I heard him. I think there are scores of TradeFi companies and large ones with the exact same idea. And I'm really confident that a year from now, we will have regulatory clarity.
So that's a pretty big statement. A year from now, regulatory clarity, a lot of TradFi coming in, wall of really liquidity playing into this, money supply increasing, China getting coiled up for a potential rerun of economic power. What does that mean to you? Does it mean 2025 is the bull run everybody's been waiting on? I think this is the factor that plays into it. Elections, of course, are going to be a big factor here as well. Novogratz goes a little bit further into how that may impact things. Take a look.
This is going to be who gets the vote. To me, I think it's a 50-50 call right now on who's going to win. And you're going to see it all in 7 states, 42 counties, and about 100,000 votes. It's a crazy way to elect a president. I do think, though, going forward, both the House and the Senate and whoever's in the executive side is going to be pro-crypto. I've spent a lot of time with different congressmen and senators. I'm seeing one today on the Republican side. And they all kind of get it now. This is an important technology for America. And
when you say pro-crypto, though, what does that mean? I mean, look, there's Bitcoin and there's Ether. Then I'm looking at Solana. There's Ripple below it. What else are we talking about?
I think it's relatively simple what DC has to do. They have to pass a market infrastructure bill that's not too suffocating, right? Tell us where we're regulated. One reason we don't have a lot of apps on top of these blockchains is that companies are scared to build. Real companies are scared to build apps on top of blockchains because they're not sure if they're going to get arrested for issuing a token or not. And so once there's clarity, you'll see a lot more innovation on blockchains. And so it's a market infrastructure bill, a stablecoin bill, and it's a direction to the OCC to let TradeFi companies hold crypto on their balance sheets. Those three things, and I'll stop going to Washington.
Yeah, and I think the point he's getting at is he is right. There are going to be a lot of businesses that once we do get regulatory clarity, he's right. There's going to be companies and brands that are going to start building a lot of these ecosystems. One of them, of course, is going to be Ethereum, as it continues to be the case. Ethereum is skyrocketing right now in terms of whale activity. It's primarily volume. And if you look at the comparison of ETH, I just want to show you guys real quickly. I'll zoom in right here on volume versus market cap. So there's volume versus market cap. You can kind of see the 300 bill against 23 bill. And then if you look at Bitcoin, volume versus market cap, 1.2 trillion versus 44 billion right there. So you can kind of see it's barely a comparison showing, well, it's a good comparison showing ETH's potential here in terms of just volume and activity, which what to Novogratz's point is that there's a lot of companies that are going to really accelerate on that, especially if we get the market structure bill going in place. And I think that will be a big step forward as we go into 2025. Question is timing along with the bull market, or is this one of those scenarios where we just see a market reset and we see maybe a potential forever market starting to develop going forward on this? So it's a lot of things in place right now. A couple of charts right now. Bitcoin, of course, so almost 6% down over this last little bit. And we are seeing, a lot of this is still global tensions. Many people look at digital assets. I think Bitcoin may end up being the winner here in where some of these could go, especially if it gets a little bit more heated here. You look at, of course, the entire market right there on the right-hand side, all in the red right now. Solana even down to 146 on a big dip. Avalanche dipping down to 26 at its low right at 25. So there could be some opportunities here, guys, but keep vigilant on watching some of these tokens, because some of these could really start to go into lower sections in terms of opportunities. If you're not in the Diamond Circle, make sure and get in right now. It's our place, which is a place for you guys to connect. We have a great forum over there. Of course, it's a great community, and it's free to get in. So just click the link down below. Of course, you can follow me out there on X, @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.